as I mentioned, you know, that 8 hours of sleeping, it's the reparation mode. You know, so just divide your day into 3 equal parts of 8 hours. That sleeping mode, which we all understand, we are fasting. So when we wake up in the morning, we go into our next 8-hour phase of this 3-phase cycle that we experience every day. So that second phase is the break fast mode, or the breaking of the fast. Then we have our third phase, that's the intake mode. That's when we're putting in the building material. But that break fast phase is very, very, very crucial. Because as we sleep, as we do the repair work, of course the stomach empties out and the stomach closes down or comes back to close to a rudimentary stage when we wake up in the morning. So during that break fast period, that stomach that is normally the normal size of it is the size of our fist. So when you get into that stomach in the morning and open it up, you know, with a traditional breakfast, a big breakfast, then we stretch that bag open real wide. And of course, it's not going to close down again. It's not going to shut down again till it's empty and till we go back to another sleeping mode. So the doctors will say, yes, the breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And I agree with them. But when they tell you eat a big one, then we part company. Because if you eat a big one, you stretch that bag, you're going to need to keep it full for the rest of the day. So the morning period, that breakfast phase, it's not a meal. It is an 8-hour phase of elimination, removing toxins. It's really just emptying the waste bin. It's waste management time for the day. So it's elimination, elimination, elimination. So of course, we want to consume foods that are going to facilitate the elimination process. And these are foods that are high in moisture, high in fiber. And these are the break fast food: fruits, liquids, fruits, vegetables, if the body cannot process the fruits, because they become very powerful medicine in bodies that are very toxic. And we may get diarrhea, we may get the headaches, we may get the runs or something, and we misinterpret the power, the value, or the energy of these fruits, which are electrical foods. So we need to go to the electromagnetic foods, which are vegetable. They clean the body, they create the process on a slower level that we can be more tolerable of the crisis or the potential healing crisis that the elimination of excessive toxin can bring about in the body. So the starches and the protein, these are the building foods. These are the magnetic foods. So as I said, the body is eliminating in the morning. The body is emptying the trash bin. So why try to put in some building foods? Why try to put in a traditional breakfast, the whole cereal concept breakfast, and all the grease and other things that goes with traditional breakfast? You know, we know that if we read anything about fasting, that is totally unscientific to break a fast with cereals, with bacon, with eggs, with granola, with tofu, with heavy foods. Those are building foods, and they should be consumed in the afternoon, between 12 and 8 p.m., between lunch and dinner. This is the intake mode when we're putting those raw building blocks, the protein and the starches, or the complex carbohydrates. Food addiction. Well, you know, what food addiction really is, as we say the word addiction, it's really intoxication. So it's a drug. It's toxins, it's garbage, it's waste that has been backed up in the system. So it is a very tough addiction to deal with. It's actually one of the most challenging of all. Because what we're doing, in reality, we are producing the drugs within. We're manufacturing the drugs, because any food that we consume that the body does not recognize as food that's fit for it, then it doesn't digest, it doesn't get processed adequately, so it just sits in the body and decay, it rots, and releases a lot of toxins. These toxins permeate the cells, and once we try to withdraw from it, then what happens is that since the body doesn't have to spend so much time digesting, elimination kicks in automatically. So the elimination is really the challenge. The food comes back upstream, and as it comes upstream, then we're in a very uncomfortable position because our elimination organs are not moving them out or evacuating them as fast as they're being released from the tissues. So the body goes through this constant battle of trying to defend, trying to protect, a certain feeling, a certain energy field. So it keeps pushing the toxins back down. So it's really about coming to peace with food, coming to peace with your life, coming to peace with the body, and stop postponing the elimination confrontation. You got to face up to it. It's going to be headaches, it's going to be nausea, it may be vomiting, it may be fainting, but that's better than it getting to the point where it's arthritis, where it's cancer, or where it's a more serious warning signal. So it's about taking ownership and saddle in and get ready to reverse the process. So moving on that level, then it's about liquids. We need to flush it out. So we need to keep it moving. So as long as we keep hydrated, then a lot of this is going to pass in a relatively short period of time. You don't have to be sick. It is not part of living. So allow yourself to evacuate, to empty out, to have clean cells that are going to nourish the system automatically, so disease has no place to be. Well, my thoughts on vegetarians who drink alcohol. Alcohol is it depends on to what extreme the alcohol has been developed. But alcohol itself, especially once you go off like more than 5% and you get into wine and beer and liquor and these types of things, now you're creating a toxic environment in the body that the body now needs to try to neutralize. So the way that the body neutralizes these toxins is that it gives it something to feed on, or it gives it a sponge to soak it up. So traditionally, they say, yes, a glass of wine is good with a certain meal. Yeah, it's good with a certain meal that wine is going to help to digest, help to break down. And the more extreme the alcohol you're going to find, then the more extreme the consumption of high, dense animal protein. So it's not realistic for someone to be a vegetarian or even want to be a vegetarian and be consuming alcohol, because the alcohol needs a sponge, or at least it needs something to cook. It is fuel for fire. So if you don't give it some animal flesh to cook, then be careful, it may cook you. Cirrhosis of the liver is a real thing. So you notice the more alcohol you drink, the stronger the alcohol, the rarer you want your meat. And basically they go hand in hand. So the more meat you eat, the more alcohol you would want to consume. So be careful. Of course, culturing, is great, to be able to just lightly turn something into a vinegar acid base, whether it's fruits or herbs, and produce that culture that has those increased enzymatic activity in them that would help you to digest foods that you put into the body that are void of enzymes. But be careful also, now there's a lot of interesting cultured foods on the market in the vegetarian circle, things like kombucha, a freak, weird, so-called mushroom that was discovered in Siberia. And but anyway, we don't have to get into the kombucha specifically, but mushrooms are fungus. They're toxic detox, they're toxic release from the earth. And they're yeast factories. They're not really food for human consumption. So they create that acid environment in the body, and the body actually pollutes itself. It's the same thing when we consume certain foods that were not designed for the body, besides the mushrooms. When we consume things like cooked starches, complex carbohydrates, like deeply grown root vegetables, like yams and potatoes, and also certain grains, and certain beans or legumes that are high in starch. Now, these foods, if we don't process them according to their nature, which is basically allowing the starch to be converted into sugar to turn into a simple carbohydrate by them digesting in the body properly. So if they don't digest, what happens? They ferment. And in the fermentation process, we produce alcohol. So many of us, we go irrational. We literally drunk, from making our own brew. A definite correlation between food and mental health. The human body has a high moisture content. We're at least 70% blood, 70% liquid, and that blood permeates the entire system, and naturally it soaks up the mind, it soaks up the brain. The brain on a regular basis has a good 90% blood flow streaming into it, but in the brain area, that blood circulation slows down. It moves slower there than anywhere else. So if the blood is laden with toxins, those toxins are going to linger on the brain longer than we would like them to be. And I'm not talking just about the food toxins that we know ourselves by eating certain foods that generate a certain kind of waste, but even some environmental hazards, some lifestyle hazards, even the toxins that we consume from, say, even torching a herb, burning a herb like ganja. We extract a lot of the toxins out of it. And this toxin, as it goes into the bloodstream through the lungs, it hits the brain automatically right away. So we need to be careful and be conscious of how we're dealing with it. This is why in the science that I have observed, we definitely keep it live. We keep it raw, because taking that herb, taking that fresh ganja in a juice form, then you don't activate the toxins. It's no different than boiling your herbal tea. And we know we don't boil herb tea, we just steep it. Because the more heat you apply the heat to herbs, the more toxins you're going to draw out. Yes, the herb is for the healing of the nation, and the herb does have tremendous, powerful medicinal value. But also we can activate the toxic element in the herb as well by going beyond the temperature we apply to that herb in the process of making it available to our system by exposing it to a heat that's higher than the highest recorded solar temperature on the planet ever. So yes, we can take it and make sun tea, we can juice it through a juice extractor, or we can just eat the fresh herb just like we eat any other fresh herb. And there goes the glaucoma, there goes all of the other issues that the herbs, especially the ganja, is designed to heal. So it's healing without the pain. Some of us call that pain Irie, some of us call it, many different ways, but there's a toxic reaction that takes place. And it's the same thing with our food. So that blood circulating through the brain with dense, dry foods that are leaving toxins in the brain area, then of course we shut down our circulatory flow into the brain, less oxygen, less sugar, less protein, and the brain just dehydrates, dries up in the form of Alzheimer's, or something even more fatal, maybe an aneurysm, where one of the tubes, one of the arteries of the brain just burst, and it just spits out toxins and hits the nerves, and instant death. So